Hello there. Hope all of you are doing well today. My name is Justin. Today we're going to be doing a sports analysis for American football. To begin, we're going to go through the backgrounds of the rules. The object of the game is simple. You play to win the game. You move down the field within four downs or chances, get to the end zone for a touchdown either by running it in or passing the ball in. Teams get four downs or chances to get another first down. They don't make a first down within that time or the four downs, ball gets turned over. Now, if they make it within the first four downs, they move the ball 10 yards and they keep going until they get a touchdown. For scoring measurements, a touchdown is 6 points. A point after a touchdown or an extra point is a single point. It would make it 7 total points after a touchdown. 2 point conversions are elected by a team. If they just for strategic purposes, it's 2 points. It will make it 8 total points. A safety is also 2 points. It occurs when the defense tackles or touches a player within the end zone. If a team does not make it in three downs, they can have one of three options. You either punt the ball, kick a field goal, or go for it. Your placement on the field determines this outcome. So if you're within 10 to 40 yards, you generally try to go for a field goal, or you can attempt a fourth down conversion. If you're 40 to 65 yards from the opposing team's field goal, you attempt a punt. As stated earlier, if you don't make it in four downs, that is considered a turnover, and the opposing team gets possession of the ball. Games last 4 15-minute quarters, and there's also extra quarters called overtime when necessary. Total playing time is 60 minutes, but as we'll discuss later, the amount of time that players actually play football during that 60 minutes varies. Average time to complete a game is roughly 3 hours and 12 minutes, though there are variabilities in that. Sometimes you have games as quick as 2 hours and 33 minutes, such as the Colts and the Tennessee Titans in '08. And then you have longer games that will go into double or triple overtime. You have a 2 minute break in between the second and the fourth quarter called 2 minute warning, and a 15-minute break in between the second and the third, known as halftime. Now, positional demands. The numbers of players. There's 11 players in the field and 45 players make up a total team. They're split into three groups: offense, defense, and special teams. To begin, we have the quarterback. They need to know every position on the field, all the plays, and they need to know where the receivers are. They need quick mental recovery and positive responses for plays. They set the tone for the team. They're the game manager. You have the O line who blocks for the QB. They need strength, power, and blocking ability to block the defense and create plays for the offense. Five line up on the line. You have the left and right tackle, the left and right guard, and the center. That center is the most important of the roles. They have to touch the ball every time. They have to make interplay calling, and they have to make adjustments on the fly in case of defensive adjustments. Then you have the running backs. They're fast players, able to juke and push off defensive players who try to tackle them. They need to be quick and agile in order to see openings and jams all in the field. Think Marshawn Lynch in the Beastquake, being able to bob and weave his way through that Saints defense. Running backs have different positional demands compared to fullbacks. Fullbacks are tasked with blocking for the running back or for the quarterback, and they have similar demands for the running back, but they're generally stronger compared to the running backs. Then you have tight ends who have the strength, power, and blocking ability of the wide receiver, and the pass catching skills of the wide receiver. Now, they need to get out into the space and run routes like a wide receiver, and need to block the run or pass like the O line. Wide receivers, they need to be agile, quick. They need footwork, endurance. They need to be able to trick defenders. They need to be able to jump through coverage, get balls, you name it. Think Tyreek Hill, think Jerry Rice. Now we look at the defense. You have D line, similar positional demands to the offensive line. They need the strength, blocking ability, and that ability to take hits, similar to the O line. You have 3 to 4 that line up on the ball. You have two types. You have the DTs, which line in the middle, and those are called nose tackles when they line in the middle. Then you have the DEs or the defensive ends. They're on the outsides. They need to drop back into coverage to stop receivers, get their hands up to block a pass or kick. or cover receivers near the line. Linebackers are a middle ground between the defensive line and the back of the defense. They need to cover tight ends, wide receivers, and running backs, and they are essentially the quarterbacks of the offense. And you have the cornerbacks. They play in the back of the defense. They line up on the outside and are tasked with covering the best receivers. Think Darrelle Revis of Revis Island. If they cover a player, they have to shadow that man, make sure they don't catch the ball. And if they cover a specific area, they have to make sure to stop any player or pass that comes into that area. Then you have safeties. They need to be excellent at reading and patrolling large areas of the field. You have two types. You have the strong, which is on the strong side of the run, where the tight ends run up, and they need to support the run defense and come closer to the line of scrimmage. And you got free safeties. They're generally in the back. They're more known for pass coverage and being away from the line of scrimmage. Then you have special teams. Kickers and punters are self-explanatory. They kick and punt the ball. Kickoffs, field goals, and points after touchdowns. Kick returners and punt returners, they catch and return the balls from the kickers and the punters. They need to be quick and agile, and oftentimes are wide receivers, safeties, or DBs that play in that position. Good example would be Devin Hester. He was a wide receiver on top of being a famous punt returner. Long snappers are types of centers who snap the ball on punts, field goals, and points after touchdowns. Now we look at time motion analysis for American football players. So we can see some data right here. The short end of it is that the highest total running volumes and max velocities are observed in the wide receivers and the DBs, or in positions where more running and more velocity and more agility is needed. They cover larger stretches of the field, and as such, they have higher total running volumes and maximum velocities compared to linemen who have the least amount of running and have the lowest velocities due to their positional demands. As stated earlier, wide receivers, running backs, DBs, they have the faster sprinting speeds, the lower percents of the body fat, strength scores, and so forth. Linemen are the complete opposite. And as stated earlier, linebackers are a transition group where they have some of the characteristics of an O-line or a D-line and some characteristics of the wide receivers. But positional demands determine how fast their sprinting speeds are, what their strength scores are, and body fat, VO2 max, you name it. And that applies here because high velocity efforts, acceleration and deceleration efforts, and as we can also see, the amount of plays they do, their acceleration efforts, distance, deceleration efforts, and distances. Positional demands play a big role in their max velocity and the amount of accelerations, decelerations, and how much they travel during a game. A lineman is not going to travel as much as a wide receiver or DB due to positional demands. To further go into points about the physical demands of positions, strength, power, and speed will differentiate a non-starter from a starter. Big thing that happens during play is that force development is maintained, but there are drops in peak force and peak power by the end of the first quarter, and those continue to drop until the end of the game, when by the time the game's over, they return to baseline levels. Speed and agility also decrease throughout a career, but strength improvements can last longer. And that goes for physical performance improvements. If you want to get the best out of your player, you want to make sure those performance improvements happen earlier in their career compared to later in their career, because the likelihood of them becoming faster later on in their career is likely not going to happen, but they can get stronger during the tail end of their career. Regardless of position, the predominant energy system is the anaerobic energy system. And as stated earlier, each position has specific responsibilities. You have a lineman who make contact through blocking assignments, while skilled players try to avoid contact. Because of the differing positional demands, for example, a lineman is going to have more contact over time. They're going to have more head and body trauma over time. However, because of the higher speeds and velocities that skill players such as a cornerback or a wide receiver go through, due to the demands of their position, they're going to have more severe head impacts. Something that comes into mind is the Super Bowl versus the Green Bay Packers and the Denver Broncos, when two defensive players collided into each other at full speed, knocking each other out on the spot when they were trying to stop Shannon Sharp, or I forget the wide receiver who Brett Favre was throwing to at the time. But that's just an example of how greater acceleration due to the positional demands of a certain player will have more severe head impacts for those players. Work to rest ratios. The average work to rest ratio in the NFL is about 1 to 6.2. It's more strenuous compared to high school players and college players. And as mentioned earlier, even though a game lasts 60 minutes, plays on average last 5.6 seconds. It's quicker than high school football and in college. A big thing that's been going on is that plays are becoming more offensive. The whole NFL in general is becoming more offensive. It's becoming quicker. And because of that, this number can potentially decrease due to the changes in playing style from the brooding defensive styles that we've seen in the past, such as with like the 85 Bears or the Steel Curtain era of the Steelers, to the Patrick Mahomes high-powered offense style game that we see today. Heart rate, this will continue on to the next slide. Heart rate does not differ between the offensive and defensive players. Heart rates, mean and minimum, are higher in larger players. So, for example, as we go here, players with greater body mass experience larger reductions in heart rate variability and less cardiovascular recovery. And players with low body mass experience greater fluctuations in heart rate variability. Basically, your O linemen, they're more sedentary, they rely more on strength and power, and they have greater internal core temperatures compared to wide receivers and DBs who need to rely on speed. They're more active and they have lower internal core temperatures. The heart rate is going to have more variability, and there's going to be differences in vagal HRV because of positional demands. And a big part of those positional demands is the size of the player. So the size of the player for the lineman, they're going to have less time to have less time in cardiovascular recovery compared to, say, a Tyreek Hill player who will have a better time recovering their heart rate to baseline levels or close to baseline levels theoretically due to their low body fat. Now we look at some common injuries for American football. We have traumatic injuries, overuse injuries, and heat injuries. Those are three of the more common ones. Traumatic injuries include knee injuries like the ACL, PCL, tears of the menisci, and the patellar tendonitis. As well, ankle sprains can occur due to playing surfaces, as well in cutting motions. We will touch on that with turf versus grass injuries. Overuse injuries, so this involves overtraining syndrome. So it's when a player trains beyond their ability to recover. So if you continuously work out, if you continuously sprint, and you don't give yourself enough time to rest, that will lead to an overuse injury. Heat injuries result in excessive sweating that depletes the body of salt and water. So if you don't properly cool your body or replace the fluids, it could result in a heat stroke in a worst case scenario. Top of my head, I think of the Maryland football players who tragically passed due to being in sweltering August heats and not getting enough water and not recovering enough. Concussions are a hot topic in the NFL. We look at data from the 2022 season, 149 concussions over 271 games that season. That's an 18% jump from 2021 and a 14% jump from the 3-year average between 2018 and 2020. The combined total of 213 preseason and regular season concussions was 14% higher than the 2021 range, but it was within the range of the 3-year average. The big thing is that concussions are on the rise, as stated earlier, due to the change in style of the NFL play. Another hotbed issue is turf versus grass injuries. Big reason for that is a couple of players such as Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers tore their Achilles. One of them tore their Achilles on grass. One of them notoriously tore their Achilles on turf, roughly four minutes into their playing career as a Jet. 5.65 injuries per game on turf and 5.39 on grass in the last 6 seasons. That's an increase of 4.8%. Seven of the top 10 stadiums to produce the most injuries are artificial surfaces. There's only one other natural grass surface that has that produces more injuries, and that's Mile High in Denver. That's more than 4,000 feet in the air. And it has been noted that playing in Denver has the likelihood of increasing injuries, and especially with players who have autoimmune disease, or in one instance, there's a famous player who has sickle cell anemia who was diagnosed with that, but because of the playing environment in Denver, that aggravated his sickle cell anemia, and he had to be airlifted out of Denver into the nearest hospital. There's been a 7.3% increase due to injuries with the ground and a 13.2% increase in head injuries, including all types. Non-contact injuries are slightly higher on grass, which is very interesting. Now we look at trends from 2011 to 14 to 2014, 2017. There have been a 20% increase in injuries during practices and games. In 2017, 7,154 injuries were reported in the preseason and the regular season, with 3,400 of them resulting in time missed. We've had rule changes and we've had improved protective gear that has not reduced the number of injuries suffered. As mentioned earlier, NFL players are faster, bigger, and stronger than before. As well, there's been more momentum, and it's a quicker and more agile game. As alluded to earlier, when contact is made with another player on the ground or another player head on head, that increases the likelihood of severe injuries. The NFL is a more offensive and pass oriented game compared to previous defensive and rushing oriented styles. So you've got more plays per game, more players involved per play, and more acrobatic plays. And unless there's changes made, you have a trend of injuries increasing, unfortunately. And with how the trends are going, it seems that injuries are going to be on the rise. Now we look at key performance indicators for American football. Turnovers have the largest effect. Then you have rushing performance, pass and total offensive/defensive plays. These three were the best predictors of game outcome. While you've got the other three factors such as ball control and possession change, they were considered trivial in some instances. A turnover, how much time you have on the run, and your total offensive, defensive, those will indicate a big thing about possession. So if you've got more possession, if you're able to make the other team turn over the ball more and have less time and have less possession, you're more likely to win a game in that manner. And now we look at some common sports-specific tests for American football. You want to look for speed, agility, upper body power, lower body power, and reactionary time. The 40-yard dash is a good measure for speed. For agility, you can do a 5x10x5 or a 20-yard shuffle. You have the L/3-cone drill for agility. Upper body power, there's two that come to mind. The bench press is the more popular one. Think of the 225 for the combine. Or you also have the power ball toss. Then you have lower body power. So once again with the combine, vertical jump. You also have the broad jump and the standing long jump. All of these tests mentioned are used as indicators to see if an athlete is ready for NFL caliber play. And these are tests found commonly in the NFL combine. Then we look at reactionary tests. Quick reactions are good for a great football player. However, these attributes are not easily tested compared to speed, agility, upper body power, and lower body power. And that will be it for today. All the sources are listed on these two slides, and I hope you have a great day.